All right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Jason Sims from Culver City PD in California. He has over 25 years experience in law enforcement and they're doing really, really amazing things organizationally with wellness. So I'm really excited to highlight that and have this conversation with Chief Sims. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Paige. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. We were talking a little bit offline, but I've known you kind of like through, the community for the last, we were trying to figure out how long, like 3, 4 years. And it's been really cool to see, what you guys have been doing in wellness and the program that you've been building within Culver City PD. So I'm really excited to talk about that. But before that, I'd love to kind of, give our listeners some background on you. If they don't know who you are, how did you get started in law enforcement? I know it's been 25 years. So why? Why law enforcement? And what do those 25 years look like for you?
First of all, it's hard to believe it's been 25 years. It's gone by really quickly. And I started being interested in law enforcement in high school. I took a criminal justice class, and it was something that seemed really interesting to me. To me at that time, I was interested in law enforcement or the military. I wanted to be part of something that was bigger than me. Is the best way that I can describe it and that I tell people when I talk about this. I was lucky enough to have a really good school resource officer at my high school. I grew up in Ventura, California, so I went to Ventura High School, and the Ventura Police Department had a strong SRO program at the time. And the SROs were actually pretty involved with our sports programs at the high school, and I played football, so I got to know our SRO who got me on a couple of ride-alongs, and from that point on, it was just evident to me that that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I started to focus on that. I, after high school, was lucky enough to be hired at the Ventura Police Department as a cadet, and that was a part-time position that allowed me to continue to focus on college, which is what I was doing. So I worked there for 4 years as I went through college, and when I graduated, I was incredibly fortunate to be hired by the Culver City Police Department. And yeah, been here for 25 years, and it's been an incredible ride to this point.
It really is amazing how quickly time goes. When you said that, like, you can't believe it's been 25 years, I can relate to that feeling of like time for me just feels like you blink and here we are. And it's crazy how quickly it happens. And I was just teaching at an academy and I realized, so when I first started in, teaching at academy, everyone would call me ma'am out of respect.
Yeah.
And then someone recently called me ma'am, and it had a different vibe. I was like, I don't think that it's out of respect. I think it's because I'm now like the old lady in the academy with all these kids, and they're calling me
Yeah.
ma'am. So I can relate to
Mhm.
like how quickly that goes.
Yeah. Well, they're all extremely young, which is a reflection of our profession right now. So don't take it too
100%.
hard.
Well, I know in speaking with you that, physical fitness was something that you did at a really young age. It was something that was important to you in your youth. And I would love if you could kind of explain some of the things that you did when you were younger when it came to your physical fitness and how that transitioned into your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I played sports in high school. I was an athlete, so I both played football and I wrestled, and both really physical sports. And so fitness and working out and all of those things it was just something that I did. And after being hired here at the Culver City Police Department, um, walking into this culture, not knowing a whole lot about it, I was incredibly pleased, I guess, or felt right at home with the culture here at the time and still to today, which is a culture that really focuses on physical fitness.
Mm.
And so right away, I felt at home. We've had well before I got here 25 years ago, we've had a pretty nice and good sized gym on the facility here that we've put a lot of money into recently, especially. Um, but so it felt like such a great match for me here coming into this culture. A lot of other things with it as well, family atmosphere. You know, we're 160 total people here at the Culver City Police Department, 109 sworn. Um, and so, you know, with that culture of physical fitness, I just fit right into it. And it's something that I is really important to me now coming up through the ranks and as the chief to ensure that we continue to promote here because it's just such an important aspect of what we do in so many different ways.
And it's really interesting because, I've heard this before that, when you first started in law enforcement, wellness wasn't really something that was talked about. But I do think it's really unique that you came into a culture where physical fitness was something that was actually a priority, and it's something that has maintained throughout your entire career. And I think that we forget sometimes that physical fitness directly impacts your mental wellness. When you feel good physically, you feel better mentally, and they are intertwined. How do you feel like that culture of fitness and, your lifelong experience, being physically fit has helped you mentally over the years? Do you think that it's directly impacted your mental wellness?
Well, yeah, absolutely. For me personally, for sure. You know, again, when I got here and just kind of took a look around the landscape of our organization, I felt so at home with the culture here. One of the things that I remember distinctly is one of the first days when I walked into our gym, there was a saying on the wall from our chief at the time that said, "Work out. There are no silver medals in a street fight."
Mm.
And really resonated with me because at the time that's kind of what it was all about in terms of working out, stay in shape. You know, you don't ever know what you're going to encounter when you're working this job, and obviously the stakes are really high.
Mm.
So you know, but for me over the years, staying in shape, working out has impacted me in a variety of different ways. Physically, of course, you know, keeping my body in good shape to handle the rigors of doing this job. When I was a police officer working the streets, getting everything that you do, you know, puts an incredible amount of stress on your body, even if you're just sitting for, you know, significant parts of the day, but getting in and out of the car, running, chasing people, whatever it is that you have to do, using force and controlling people. Not to mention, and then obviously the stress that your body is under, the physical stress of responding to calls and encountering the types of things, incredibly stressful things that people who do this job encounter on a daily basis. And so, as a outlet for stress, for me, working out was and still is incredibly important. And so, you know, this is it's and you know mentally for me it helps to keep me balanced. Um, as I've gotten older, I've noticed that, and you know, obviously matured in this career in my life, I've noticed that I really feel comfortable when I'm doing the normal routine of my life. And so I have a you know wife and daughter that I really try to focus on at home, and they're my kind of foundation. And of course, you know, incredibly supportive of me in doing this. Um, so we have the things that we do at home, but when I come to work, of course, the week and the days look different depending upon what's on the calendar and what I have going on as the chief now. A lot of um, council meetings and a lot of things with, you know, dealing with our elected officials and people outside of the organization, events and so forth. And I can't control that stuff, of course, and what that's going to look like on a day-to-day or weekly basis. But what I can control is what I'm doing in my life. And that is, you know, getting up, coming in, getting a workout in, and then We actually purchased a cold plunge. So we have a cold plunge here at the facility. We have a sauna and a lot of other things that I could get into. But I love getting into the cold plunge every day after my workout, and then starting my day. And so that all of that stuff kind of works together to keep me balanced. And I really think for me, goes a long way in helping, support my mental health as a chief and somebody who's, working in an incredibly stressful position.
100%. And I love that you use the word balanced. And I think that that's a really good thing to remember is that everything has to be balanced. And when things get out of balance, like that's when things start to, get crazy and feel out of control. But the one thing that you were saying, and this is something that's actually come up a few times, and I don't know if this is how you meant it, but this is how I perceived it, was you have the discipline to do these things routinely. So you're getting up and you're saying, okay, this is what I do for my physical and my mental health, and I do it consistently. It's a routine of mine that's important. And I have the discipline to do that. And someone said recently, and I loved this, they said, discipline trumps motivation because you're not always gonna feel motivated to do those things, So it's
Yeah.
hard to be proactive, and when that alarm clock goes off for you to be like, okay, I'm getting up, I'm gonna go work out, I'm gonna cold plunge, I'm gonna do all these things before I start my day. It would be easier to hit the snooze button 6 times and sleep until the very last minute, roll out of bed, and then start your day and not feel as good physically, mentally, as a result to that. But that was what I heard and what you said is that you have that routine and you're disciplined to do it. And that's what is setting you up for success.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think that was something that was ingrained in me and was a part of my personality. And I think a lot of us who are attracted to this profession have that type of a personality, a
For
disciplined
sure.
personality, because obviously it takes a lot of discipline to get into this profession and be successful in it and have a long career. Um, and it is uh, just mentoring, and again the culture that I have been a part of for so long here at my department, because it has done so much for me and to really support what I already believed in as a
Mhm.
person coming into this organization. Lifetime physical fitness, not getting fit for the academy and then you go to the academy and now you can let yourself go. No, we're about this department is about lifetime physical fitness.
Yeah.
And I wish I could take credit for it, but and I can't. I could take credit for doing what we can do as an organization to maintain it and continue to have this culture here at our department. But I was super fortunate enough to come into this culture, but then also have mentors who took me under their wing and really helped to teach, guide me, mentor me with all of this stuff, not just the job, but we talked about, and they expected me to be at the gym and they expected me to
Mhm.
have this routine to make, I remember it distinctly. Mentors would talk to me about making fitness a part of your workday, a part of your life, a part of, again, your routine. This is just what you do. When
Mhm.
you come to work, you come here, you come early enough to leave time for a workout before you start. And that is, it's the expectation to this day with the people that we have here, and our new people are still being indoctrinated in the same way. So again, it is, and I think it really has benefited us significantly as an organization in so many different ways. And now that we're really investing in so many other different aspects of wellness, with some of the I've already mentioned some of the things that we do, but there's so many others because we've really put a sharp focus on it over the last 5 years.
And I love that you said lifetime fitness. I think that that's so important for people to realize that it's about longevity so that you can have a long and successful career, a long and successful life outside of the career, retirement. And so, lifetime fitness, I love that you said that. And I think that that's an important message to remember that it's about proactive longevity, and being able to make sure that you have a long and successful life. But I also love that you had people who are holding you accountable in a positive way. So often I hear about, the culture, and you said culture a lot. And I think that it is a testament to what a good culture can do for you, and creating that culture within your organization. And that could be positive or negative. And it sounds like you guys have such a positive, wellness culture organizationally. But so often I hear the opposite. You hear organizations that have a negative culture or a drinking culture or, whatever it is. And so you guys had this culture within your organization where you held each other accountable. There were these expectations of being well and now I know it's changed and I would love to highlight some of the things that you're doing now, but at least back then it was performance on the job. Like you need to be able to be physically fit, to be well, so that you can perform the functions of your career in a safe and effective way. And I think that that is so cool. And like, what a unique experience to walk into that type of culture versus the opposite, where it's like, just like, we don't really care and we're just going to go, drink ourselves to sleep or whatever and, be hungover all day. And we don't really expect you to do anything positive. So I love that that was what your experience was. And I hope that there are a lot of other agencies out there that can cultivate that same type of culture. Um, I wanted to kind of maybe, well, two things. I don't want to get ahead of myself. One thing that we're talking about a lot right now is because there are a lot of people who maybe don't have that discipline or don't have that motivation to do the things that you're talking about, and there are a lot of people that I talk to that maybe um, fell out of that motivation that we were talking about. Um, and we talk a lot about the why, why it's important for you to be physically fit, to be able to, prioritize your wellness and have kind of a deeper meaning. What is your why? Like, why do you think that it has been important to you? Has it been performance, like you said before, or was it your family? Has it changed? And how can others who are listening to this kind of connect with their why to find that discipline and that like quote unquote motivation to start?
Yeah, well, for me, it's been different over my career. When I first started, I was 23 years old. I was single and didn't have any kids, and so my why and my purpose for maintaining, physical fitness and whatever I was doing at the time for wellness, which I didn't really think about, honestly.
Right.
It was just about physical fitness and staying in shape to do the job. Again, at that time I was answering radio calls, working as a detective, whatever it was, but in the field, oftentimes um, doing the physical work of being a police officer, even whether it's just the day-to-day stuff, again, because there's a lot of taxing that goes on with the body of just answering calls, getting in and out of your car, but also chasing folks, having to use physical force and all of those things. And so, and that was the motivation for me, working to stay in shape, doing the job, to be prepared, to protect my partners, this community, all of those things. As I, you know, uh, kind of matured through my career here at the Culver City Police Department, and I moved into more administrative jobs, the stress became different. And there's still a significant amount of stress in working these administrative assignments within an organization, and any administrative assignment, whether you're a desk detective and you have a caseload. I worked professional standards for several years. That has its own unique stressors. Um, And I think this type of stress, and now as the chief and the things that I deal with, or a member of the command staff before that, it's different, but honestly, because it's so, um, I guess the physical stress of doing the job was much less foreign to me and something that I could wrap my head around. In a lot of ways, the stress that I've experienced in working, the administrative assignments, in particular, getting into the command staff and now the chief, that is more challenging for me to deal with because
Mhm.
it's not the normal type of stress that I experienced through my life, whether it was, again, doing the job as a young police officer or the physical stress that I experienced playing sports or whatever it was. So it's different. And, but I try to, again, um, uh, like I, like I did when I was a new police officer, understand what it is that I need to do to stay fit, um, mentally, physically. So I've adjusted in what I do now. It looks different than what I did at the time when I was a young police officer. So whether it be changing the way that I work out, of course, a lot of that has to do with aging and just changing my workout routine. I was actually talking about it this morning. I was fortunate enough in 2016 to go to the FBI National Academy, which really had a big impact on the way that I worked out. Before I went, I had played football. So I was bench press, incline
Mhm.
press, squats, cleans, that type of stuff. Really focusing on strength training and getting big muscles and all of those things. Um, After going to the FBI National Academy, and hearing what they had, and I was having back problems at the time before I had gone, and really, took a couple of fitness classes, and they have a really strong fitness program there at the academy where they really study fitness,
Mhm.
the types of things that law enforcement should be doing. It really changed my perspective on what I should be doing to stay fit at my age, and considering the things that I do now, which were at that point pretty all administrative, so a lot of sitting, a lot of stress that you don't necessarily see. It's happening to you physiologically. And so since then, and in making those changes in my life and the way that I work out and approach my day-to-day workouts, more, hit workouts, high intensity stuff, making sure I stretch, which was something I never cared about before.
Yeah.
And focusing on core exercises to strengthen my core, to support my lower back, all of those things, you know, it was totally new to me, and I just didn't think about it before. So, as I've progressed through my career, I've really tried to, I guess, just where am I? What does my body and mind need? And then adjust so that I'm supporting my wellness. Because of course I'm not going to be very good to this organization if I'm not well. And all of that for me, as a dad and a family man, is rooted in my foundation, which is my family. So those are some of the things that I do and have done throughout my career to try to support my wellness, in the different positions that I've been in, because it is different for each of those.
I love that you mentioned that because it takes an incredible amount of humility. And I've had to go through a similar experience in my life where you're like, I used to do all these things and I was like bench pressing and I was really strong and I was doing all this stuff. And then, like, as you get older, it's like, okay, well, maybe those things aren't serving me in the way that they used to. Maybe they're actually doing more harm than good because of XYZ. And also understanding where you are and what you need in this um, phase of life, maybe is a good
Yeah.
way to put it, or this like chapter, and understanding that now you have more mental stress and in a different way. And now you maybe sit more than you used to. And so, what does physical and mental wellness look like for you now versus what it did when you were a younger officer? And having that one that awareness to say, okay, this is different now, but also the humility to say, okay, maybe I do need to step back a little bit. And maybe I do need to focus on my mobility. But then having your why rooted into a bigger picture, before, like you said, before you had a family, it was, so that I can do my job in the most effective way that possible. And now it's like I still want to do my job in the most effective way possible. But now I also want to make sure that everything that I do, make sure that I can be here for my family in the best way possible. And so I love that you said that, because I do think that we get so stuck in like, this is what I do. And I think having that ability to adapt over time so that you're the most, well that you can be right now is a really important message for people to listen to, especially if you're a younger officer starting out, just knowing that like things change over time and that's okay. And you
Yeah,
can adapt.
yeah. And, I mentioned my family, of course, for me in my personal life, and my family is so much more important than anything that I have going on here at the Culver City Police Department. And so that's an important mindset that I think, well, at least it's important to me to try to remind myself of that. And because that's not always easy to do, of course, with the stresses and demands of a job, especially when you're the chief of police. And so all of this, a lot of the stuff that I do, and then, whether it be the things I've talked about or ensuring I'm going to the doctor, and I just had a body scan, which is something that we offered for all of our employees, and is to ensure that I'm there for my family once this career has ended, which is incredibly important because again, at the end of the day, they're what's most important. But then professionally here within this building, um, the, I mentioned it, but just to reiterate, being the chief, I consider it an incredible honor. Um, that comes with a lot of responsibility. And, we in management, I like to think of it in this way, and especially me, and I lead this effort, serve the people of this organization, the people who are doing the work of the Culver City Police Department, because they are the Culver City Police Department. It's not this building that I'm currently sitting in. It's the people of the Culver City Police Department. So we exist in management to serve them. And I'm not going to serve them very well if I'm not doing well. And so I take the responsibility of this position incredibly seriously. And I think a big part of that is having the capacity to serve them in the right way. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm not fit physically, mentally, and all of the things. And so, professionally, that now is my why, which changed dramatically from when I was a new police officer.
Right.
Um, Personally, of course, it's, my why is always rooted in my family.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important thing to remember that, as leadership, you have to also take care of yourself. And I love that you said that, like, if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of my people or my family. And I think that a lot of leadership forget that. They forget to take care of themselves because you are, and one of my favorite reasons why I work with law enforcement is because you are the best people at like really caring about other people. Like you really want to help other people. And I have not met anyone in law enforcement who got into this job because they didn't want to help people. There's always that like servant mindset of like, I want to be there and I want to help and I want to protect and I want to serve. But I think that in that, sometimes you forget to take care of yourself. And having that mentality of like, I have to take care of myself if I want to serve and I want to help others, like that has to be a foundation. So I think it's a really good reminder, especially in leadership, when you get, in those higher ranks of like, if you want to help your people and you want to be there and you want to be a leader, you also have to take care of yourself. So I appreciate that mindset. I want to highlight all the things that you're doing within your organization. And I love talking to California agencies because you guys have like, it almost sounds like spas. You have the sauna and the cold plunge and all these really, really great resources. And there are a lot of organizations across the country that are still in infancy stages or trying to build a wellness program. And so it's really cool to talk to California agencies who are, a little bit ahead of that curve and have already done it. So if you are able to highlight maybe some of the top things that you guys have that you have found to be really successful and beneficial and you've had really good, feedback with, that would be awesome. So you can, say as many things as you want, but I think it's really cool to highlight, those things that you've already established that are successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's funny that you say spot because we have a Zen den that I'll describe shortly.
I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we do a lot, and I think that if you had talked to me 6 or 7 years ago and told me all the things that we're doing now, I would have like laughed at you that there's no way we would have a Zen den at our police department. We're a police department. Are you kidding me? But but I really think that our mindset here at the Culver City Police Department really shifted right around 2020 when we were all going through a really difficult time in general, people, I mean, our society, and those of us in law enforcement, of course, as well, with everything that was going on with COVID, George Floyd stuff.
Yeah.
Here, Culver City is located on the west side of Los Angeles County, and the defund the police movement was really strong here and in this community especially. And our officers were involved with the worst of it that you saw on the news in 2020. And because that was all happening here in our region, and we had some of it here in our city with civil unrest and all of those things. And so they were experiencing a tremendous amount of stress and far more than we had ever seen. The negative sentiment played such a huge role in that here because they weren't only out literally standing in skirmish lines, addressing serious civil unrest here, but then in our region with our mutual aid partners and here in our city to a lesser extent. But then they were hearing this really negative sentiment being espoused by activist groups in our community, and at the time we were really close to being defunded by 50%. It came down to a really, really tight vote by our city council at the time. And so that was, again, challenging for everyone, but it was really hitting us hard. And that had so many different negative effects on our organization. I mentioned the stress, and our people that we had were under a tremendous amount of stress. Our staffing levels were the lowest that I had ever seen in my career. We had our injury on duty numbers were higher than I had ever seen in my career. And I think it was all a reflection of just what our people were experiencing at that time. Yeah. And so we really put our heads, I was the assistant chief at the time, and we really put our heads together, like, how can we support our people in every way? And when it came to supporting them, their mental wellness and their physical well-being, what can we do as an organization to ensure we're doing everything that we can? Like, we can't control a lot of the stuff that's happening out here in society and a lot of the things that they're hearing, but what can we control here within the organization that can help to support them? So we really started to, as I mentioned, put a sharp focus on supporting our people in every way that we can. Obviously, because that's our job and our role, and I take that very seriously. We are here to support our people, but also just for practical purposes, like, we need to retain and recruit and hire people because our staffing is lower than it's ever been. And so we started to look at what we can do, as I said. So we did things that were uncomfortable for us at the time, like uniforms. You wouldn't think, like, what's the big deal? What your uniform looks like? Well, it's a big deal to the people who are working and having to do this job. And we're not, the weather's pretty good out here in California. We don't experience the heat that Arizona does.
Rub it in.
Some of our nearby states, or the extreme cold. So we were really, again, talking about culture, we were traditionalists, and I in particular was a traditionalist when it came to uniforms. Like, no, you're wearing your wool uniform. We're police officers. That's what we wear. But given the moment we were in and everything again that I explained, we made some adjustments to that, and we're willing to um, make cultural changes to support our people.
Mhm.
And so we went to a much more comfortable uniform with an outer vest, which obviously has other, health benefits with your lower back and all of those things. And our folks loved it. Throughout this whole process, one of the things that was an eye opener for me is these little things that we do make such a huge difference for these folks. For our people again that we exist just to support. We allowed our detectives to wear a more relaxed uniform, and we did this all year round. We started off, okay, well, this is the summer uniform now. You can wear this in the summer, the outer vest and the cotton, uniform. And then we just said, you know what? We made it year round. Our folks really enjoyed wearing it, so we made it year round. We started a peer support program, and this group of people who have a passion for supporting our people have been instrumental in everything that we've done at our department from that time to now. They work hand in hand with a therapist, a clinical psychologist that trains them, and they do annual check-ins with our folks. And when we identify as management or anybody else in the organization that someone is having an issue, we notify our peer support team and they immediately start supporting that folks. So that has been, whether it be a critical incident doesn't have to be an officer involved shooting, but they would be called out for that. It can be a really difficult call with, involving a child or involving a death or whatever the case might be. And again, that was a big cultural or mindset change for us, trying to, move away from we're tough, we don't need to ask for help, and remove the stigma of asking for help, and making it not only like, no, it's okay if you ask for help, but we're going to help you. We're going to offer
Yeah.
you help before you ask us.
Mhm.
And so and again, our peer support program has been integral in helping us to change that culture here within our organization. And so, but up to and including folks who are experiencing issues with alcohol, because we're not immune to that issue here at our department either.
Sure.
We implemented a support dog program here. We
Mhm.
have a lab who's here
Mhm.
on site, and he's great here in the building with our people. But we also found that, hey, we take him out in the community and everybody loves him, which is great for us because it helps with our community, connections and all of those things. So we'll take him to our community events. We built a barbecue area here at our department, and throughout the year sometimes we'll hire somebody and one of the associations will pay for a barbecue for our people, or the management, once or twice a year, we'll get out there and we'll smoke some ribs and cook some tri-tips and all of the things for our folks. We applied for and we're fortunate enough to get funding, because a lot of this stuff, of course, and it's important to talk about,
Yeah.
requires money. And even if you're just talking about training a peer support team. And so we did get, just through our normal budget process, we did increase our funding, and get additional funding to support our peer support program and some of the training that goes along with that, because they also work with our clinical psychologist to do every month, every 2 months, a seminar for all of our folks. They'll come in here, they do it at different times throughout the week, and they'll do, financial planning, fitness, nutrition, seminars on all of the things that we associate with being well, both physically and mentally. But that, again, that does cost money. And so we did, through our normal budget process, get increase our funding for that stuff. A little bit, not a lot, maybe by
Mhm.
20 or $30,000 annually. And it's we're lucky in that it's the same. And although we've brought in some different vendors, at the time it was the same vendor that we used for like our pre-employment psychological exams and things of that nature. So we just increased that funding for that contract. But then we also received 2 or 3 grants. And so we received over to this point $400,000 in grant funding for both equipment and programming. And so we just started using the grant for the programming, and we're going to increase our training and the seminars that I described here in our organization. But we used the grant for equipment to replace some of the equipment in our gym, treadmills, stairmasters, that type of stuff, update and upgrade our gym. But then also we bought a cold plunge, which again, when it was first pitched to me and the command staff, sounded crazy. How would we even do that? And so we just said, okay, let's look into it and come back with a proposal. And to their credit, we had a group of people who were passionate about it. Again, they're associated with our peer support program, and they identified a space here in the building. They, the costs and all those things, and we bought it. And it's been, I use it every day. As I think I mentioned earlier, I made it a part of my routine every day that I'm here after my workout, unless I have something going on where time-wise it doesn't work out. But pretty much every day I use the cold plunge, which I found to be really beneficial for me, at the very least to help with those aches and pains of, again, that we start to, or at least I am, as I get older and started to experience. But I also find that it really helps to invigorate me and makes me feel good in the morning. And it's become such an important part of my day, just getting ready to start the workday. But we also have a sauna for folks who like that. We bought 2 really kind of like high-end massage chairs that, most folks have probably seen something similar at Costco. But these we saw at a trade show. It was actually like a wellness trade show, and they're incredible. You get in them, they use like compression to on your arms and legs and massaging your back at the same time. We have 2 of those. Those are incredibly popular. But then we took a space that we had, and we created what we call the Zen Den, and I mentioned that earlier. Where we have sound therapy, aromatherapy, and just couches to chill out on. It's like a break area, and that's where the massage chairs are. We keep the lighting low there, so that our folks, when they have a break and they need to take time to decompress, they can do that, and they can do that there, and it's relaxing. It's a really I don't know, best way to describe it is a Zen environment where it's a relaxing place to be with low light and sound and aromatherapy and all those things, which would have sounded crazy to me, as I said earlier. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, wow, we have this at a police department, but our people love it. And quite frankly, they deserve it. And so it's been a culture change for us to really wrap our arms around it. And we've made it a point to not be, on the cutting edge of wellness, but we're doing everything we can to be on the bleeding edge of wellness here at the Culver City Police Department. So there are a lot of other things, because we've put such a focus on it, that we did do we call it like an open air market, where we have, a snack area where folks can go. It's stocked. We have a vendor that does it. It's at no cost to us. You go down there, there's a scanner, you scan what your item that you want to buy, and then you scan your payment card or whatever it is. And so it's paid for by the employee, but it's pretty low cost, and they have the ability to get a snack or whatever in the building, which is important at times if you're really busy. We did invest in an app as well to kind of centralize all the wellness offerings that we have here at the Culver City Police Department. But the challenge with that is getting people to use it. And, and so we haven't seen a ton of traffic on it. We're kind of looking at reevaluating that right now. But then how do we support our folks who are sitting at a desk all day long? We did this, we bought stand and sit for everybody in the building, workspaces. I have one here in my office. I find that to be incredibly helpful for my lower back. We also bought desk treadmills for a lot of our administrative staff. And we're looking to do a lot more. We have a significant amount of grant funding that we haven't spent. So, I think that as we move forward, we'll see what else is out there in this wellness arena that we can implement here at our department because we're committed to it.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm laughing with you because, I started in this wellness space 8 years ago, and I was met with that same like, what? Like cops don't do this. This is not a part of our culture. Like, what do you mean? And now having conversations where you're totally speaking my language, but it's interesting to see that like shift, even in the last 8 years, where it's like, yeah, like you guys have Zen dens and aromatherapy and, all of these things that we've known for a long time are beneficial, but I think it's just the timing was right, like you said, when in 2020, you're like, wow, like we need to do something to support the wellness. And I think that people were receptive to that. And I think that's really important when it comes to wellness. Like you can have everything, under the sun, but if people aren't going to use it and they're not receptive to it, it's not going to benefit anyone. And so it sounds like it was the perfect timing to start introducing these things where people were like, yes, we're receptive, we need it. As an organization, you are receptive because you're like, hey, like we need to support our people in this really hard time, but also like we need to be enticing to new recruits as well to bring them in because we're short staffed. And so it just kind of felt like the perfect formula. But one of the things I loved that you said, well, a couple things. One, like the small things can make a huge impact. And I think that's important to remember, especially if there are agencies out there who maybe don't have as much funding. It's like little things like a barbecue can make a huge difference with morale and wellness. And also, even just that message of like, hey, it's okay for you to ask for help. And when you do, we are going to help you to the best of our ability. Like that message right there, I think is so powerful because if someone asks for help, and then there isn't that receiving end of like, okay, well, here you go. This is how we're going to help you. I think that that's a really important message. And then I always love the dog. I'm always so happy whenever you say that there's a dog. And I actually have not heard that, anyone say that the dog helped you to connect with your community. I've heard it in the sense of like it's helped with victims. Where you bring them and maybe it opens them up, especially kids, and but to bring them out in the community and create that community support and engagement, I think is a really interesting perspective. So, I mean, you guys are doing a ton of things. It sounds like everyone's really receptive to it, which is great. If there is someone who is, maybe not from California, who's in leadership, who's listening to this, who is kind of in their infancy stages and maybe doesn't have grant funds or doesn't know where to start, what is like maybe the one thing that you would say, hey, start here, or this is something that you could do like today or tomorrow that would be really beneficial as like a jumping off point?
Yeah, well, first let me just also state because I think it's important to like, well, what does all this do for your organization? I mean, we know
Yeah.
we're in here, we're feeling it every day. We see how beneficial these things are, and evidenced by the fact that people are using them and are giving us that feedback. But I think also, I mentioned that we were in a staffing crisis right around 2020. A lot of people were. We were down, it was somewhere in the range of 20% vacancy rate, which is just, again, I had never seen anything like that. Um, and now, fast forward 5 years later, and we're, 5%, something to
Wow.
that extent. And I think that was we one of the reasons why we focused again is to serve our people, but also how do we recruit? Well, let's first start on retaining our people. And so we
100%.
feel like this has done so much for that. And then also absenteeism,
Mhm.
at we feel like is a pretty good measure of how well our people are, a good measure of their wellness. And we've experienced a 24% decrease in overall absenteeism over the last 2 years once
Wow.
we really started ramping this stuff up. So there are actually data points that we can point to and say, hey, look, yeah, we've implemented all this stuff. We spent all this money on these programs. We know it's beneficial because we see it, but also take a look at this data because I think it really highlights the benefits of focusing on this type of stuff. Our people deserve it, number one, but also there are these what are just more practical reasons as an organization, as the executive of an organization, why you would want to focus on this. And again, we put a sharp focus on it and really put a lot of time and energy into it and have really seen the benefits that you can quantifiable benefits. Um,
Thank you for bringing that up, and I don't want to like interject here, but like I think that that's such an important thing, and that's amazing, first of all, that you're seeing the metrics and that there's an actual tangible ROI, because I think that there is that kind of resistance of like, well, I don't have the money, or like if we spend this money, like how do we know that it's actually going to work? And sometimes there isn't that like that tangible success where you can see like, okay, well, this actually helped with our sick time and absenteeism. This actually helps with retention and recruitment because now our staffing has raised significantly. The other part of it is injuries. If we can start to like really track and measure, like, okay, you said in 2020 you had the highest injury rate you've ever seen ever. And, was that impacted? So I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's an important topic to say, yes, it is an investment and there is money that's required, but we are seeing an actual, like, tangible ROI, or if people don't know what ROI is, return on investment. We are investing in our people, but we are actually seeing that return on investment because our people are well. So
yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. And that number I mentioned, that vacancy rate, going from 20 to 5
Yeah.
now, that includes long-term injuries. And so we've seen a significant decline in those. Doing this job, you're always going to experience injuries. You're always going to carry, if you will, a number of folks who are injured because it's a physical job. So folks injure their knees, they need to get surgery, they're off for a time, all of those things. But going from where we were, whether it be vacant positions or long-term injuries, 20% vacancy rate for an agency of 160 people is a
Yeah.
big number. And
Yeah.
then going to 5, where we're at now, which is a much more manageable place to be, and that has had a big impact on the wellness of our people in the building, because when we were at that 20% vacancy rate, our folks were just being ground down with work
Yeah. Like
because we have
mandated
well we have to
overtime.
maintain our mandatory minimum staffing levels. And if we don't have the people to do it, then we rely on the people that we have to work the overtime to fill those positions. And so our folks were just working too many hours, and we're exhausted
Yeah.
physically, mentally, all of those things. And so we're in a much better place right now. And there are other factors, of course, where we are as a society, kind of the sentiment surrounding law enforcement, that all has an impact on recruitment, and to an extent, maybe retention. But I really believe and have seen that our programming related to wellness and the way we focus so much on it has had a huge impact on those things for us. And I was, in full transparency, I was one of those people. Again, I'm a traditionalist in law enforcement. And so for me, it was really a paradigm shift to even consider a lot of these things. And to your question that you asked, like, what can you do? Well, I'll tell you what we did. If you're an agency that is looking to start a wellness program, start small, take a look around. I did this when I became the chief. I'm sure most do when you become the executive of an organization. And meet with your folks, talk to them. What is it that we're doing well? What can we do better? And what I realized were there were a lot of, I mean, we have different parking here at our department, and we have we have lots here that are um, outside and close to the building, and then we have a parking structure that our folks also park in that also accommodates parking for our city hall facility that's next door. And our folks wanted to park their personal vehicles in this lot and not have to park them in the parking structure, which we were requiring them to do at the time. And so we just made that change. And that was such a huge deal to our people. And we had the space, but we were just, we had delineated that for our detective and patrol vehicles. But at the end of the day, there was enough spaces and people still park in both, but to allow them to park there and have that option, it was a big deal. And it was a real eye opener to me to see that. And then I mentioned it earlier, the outer vests and being flexible with our uniforms. Again, as a traditionalist, been in this job now, I say 25 years. When I first started, that everybody in the command staff had over 30 years in law enforcement. We're younger than we've ever been, at least in my organization, and I see that as a trend throughout law enforcement. And so the folks that are coming, we again in general, our police officers are younger than they've ever been. And so that brings different expectations, different personalities, different generational norms, all of the things, which is fine and okay. And it's important that we recognize that, though. And with that, they have a lot of good ideas, which I recognized when I started meeting with everybody and having these conversations. And that's when we started to really lean in to these wellness programs. But being flexible with your uniforms is an easy one if you're not already doing that. And then allowing things like polo shirts for our detectives. That was something that we had never done. And it's a little thing that has at low, in fact, that they buy their own polo shirts. We just say this is the one that you need to buy. Same with our outer vest. The officers are buying their own outer vest, so it's optional. But just having that option and having that the ability to be more comfortable when they're out at work goes a long way. And it's so those are small things. And then getting your folks together and having a barbecue. We can all do that. That has been incredibly successful for us and checks a lot of different boxes. Of course, it allows folks, they don't have to go out and buy lunch. We're feeding them, but we're also getting together as an organization, which I think is so valuable. And then take a look at grant opportunities. We just had people here who proactively, and they were passionate about wellness, and they proactively looked for these grants. These are federal grants through the Office of Community Policing, and our folks went out, sought out, took a look at what was available. And as I said, we've received over $400,000 in grant funding. And that's a lot of money for an organization of 160 total people. And so all the things that I mentioned, whether it be the cold plunge and the sauna and the chairs, that is expensive. And we all know how expensive gym equipment is. And it would have certainly been a much more difficult to get those things here had we not purchased them through grant funding. So that has been huge for us. And again, that's available to all of us in law enforcement. You just have to apply for the grant. So those are some of the things that I would recommend to anyone who's looking to get into this wellness space, if you will. And really, I see it serve and support the people of our organizations that truly deserve it.
I mean, I think it's great advice, and I think it just goes back to that, little things can make a huge impact. I love that you said talk to your people because you never would have known that like the parking in the other parking structure was something that was such a big deal on their like mental health or their excitement to walk into the building. And so I
Yeah.
love that advice. Like, talk to your people, see what they need. Like, it's about them. So, like, what are some things that you can do in a quick and easy way that are going to make a huge impact? So, I appreciate that. And then, of course, the reminder of grant funding, because, yeah, I think that there's so many grants out there that I don't want to say it's free money because you are like working for this grant, but it's a really good opportunity to get that additional funding that could help you to purchase some of these things or to fund some of these things that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do through your traditional budget line items. Um, I want to ask one last question. I know that I've taken up a lot of your time today, so I really appreciate your
Oh,
insights. But what what are some words of advice that you would give to someone who's earlier in their career? So I know we talked to leadership just now about building out a wellness program, but in the context of wellness, someone who's earlier in their career, what words of advice would you give them that maybe you have always followed, or maybe something you wish you would have known or followed that would have helped you in wellness throughout your career?
yeah. So just, I'm fortunate to have been in this profession for 25 years, and I hope to be in it for several more, and make it to the end, God willing, and enjoy the fruits of my labor, so to speak, and a long retirement. And what I have found to be most beneficial for me, and what I would recommend to younger people in this profession is, I talked about it earlier, but a good way to sum it up is just self-assess. Like, where are you in your career? What does your body and mind need at that point in time to be well and to be fit in every way, to not only perform this job at a high level and in also be prepared for longevity in this job, but also to be well outside of work, which is, incredibly important, and your family deserves that. You deserve that. And then be committed and disciplined to making those adjustments as you move through your career. Because I didn't necessarily think about it at the time, other than when I had that big change in how I worked out after I went to the FBI National Academy. Um, but other than that, I didn't necessarily think to myself like, oh, I'm at this point in my career, so I should be doing this, or I'm at this point and I should be doing that. And I was fortunate to have people around me who were leading and guiding me in the right ways. But always be willing to self-assess and evaluate where you are, what do you need. You know your body, you know how you're feeling, you know what you're experiencing in the field. If you're experiencing back pain, well, are you overweight? Should you be changing the way that you work out? Are you doing exercises that could potentially be counterproductive to what your body is feeling at that time? And if you don't know, there's plenty of information out there, on, so many different social media channels about how to adjust workouts for different things that you're experiencing. I talk to our young people here at the department about stretching, and it was completely foreign to me when I was a young police officer, not necessarily something I even cared about or thought about.
Yeah.
But it is so important as you progress through this career, because you're aging, number one, but your body has also experienced the constant wear and tear of doing this job. And if you're not stretching and taking care of your body in that way, and just a quick personal story, I got to a point where I was in my 30s and I had gone through four or so rounds of cortisone injections from in my lower back. A lot of us are doing that type of stuff, and it was helpful for me. I don't. Everybody has different experience with it, but the injections really helped me. And this was over a course of 5+ years. So the injections actually, they worked and relieved a lot of pain for a significant period of time. But I wasn't stretching. and I wasn't working out in a way that was supporting my body in the ways that it needed to be supported. And so once I made that change and I completely changed the way I thought about working out, and it wasn't about getting big and getting strong and those things and how much weight am I lifting and all of that, and really high impact workouts. And I started focusing on core strength and flexibility and high intensity interval training and those types of things to stay lean and to maintain core strength. Since that change, I have had no more cortisone injections. I haven't needed them.
Awesome.
And so I see that obviously as a personal win, just with my own physical, and then that constant pain also impacts your, at least in my opinion, your mental well-being as well, because you're just constantly dealing with that pain, and it can be overwhelming. So yeah, I think that's really the advice. Being flexible sometimes is not an easy thing to do, especially for me at least, and I think a lot of folks who are in this profession, but really doing your best to self-evaluate and try to understand and talk to the people in your organization who are doing it, who have been successful and who have had long careers. And then other folks like you, Paige, who are professionals in this arena, who really do so much for this profession. So I would like to just say thank you to you for
Thank you.
everything that you do for law enforcement.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think those are great words of advice to self-assess and, reevaluate as time goes on, listen to your body, take the appropriate steps to make sure that you're feeling your best. And when you're saying stretch, I'm like, amen to that, because obviously that's my wheelhouse. But it's funny because everyone I talk to that, like, when we talk about mobility or stretching, there is that initial like, oh, I'm as flexible as a 2x4, or like I can't touch my toes. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then let's work on that. But I do think that mobility and stretching is not a common thing, and it's a hard thing to do, especially when you're tight on time and you just want to get in and, get your workout in. And so I get it. But I'm so glad that you had a positive experience with, like you said, reevaluating how you're working out, maybe doing some more HIIT training type stuff, some more mobility stuff, and now you don't have to have cortisone shots. Like that's incredible. So I'm glad that that helped you, and I'm hoping that those words of wisdom at least plant some seeds for those who are earlier in their career, and how they can create that longevity. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your time. I know that I ran over and I took more time than I had initially asked for, so I appreciate that very much. And hopefully we'll stay in touch. And thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate it.
Of course.